Today's episode is sponsored by Future State Media, experts in off-Amazon traffic for Amazon sellers. Future State Media will build you a custom-made website to deliver sales for you on Amazon. Built to grab traffic from search engines and social media, your site can be used as a secret weapon for launching products on Amazon or just to stabilize your Amazon sales. It means you can also build an email list on autopilot. Go to futurestatemedia.com for your free guide to Google SEO for Amazon sellers today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 10K Collective podcast, the place for 6, 7, and 8-figure sellers. That may not even be high enough for our guest today. Brad Moss is an Amazon superstar. He is the CEO of Product Labs, which is one of the largest Amazon consulting and technology companies in the world. He's also the foremost business lead of Amazon Seller Central platform itself, the very ground which we walk on as Amazon sellers, and the creator of the Amazon Seller app as well, which and pretty much all of us have used forever. So, obviously the man talks about high-level strategies, and that's what we're going to do today. So, Brad, warm welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Michael. I'm super happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great to get you. I mean, you're a busy chap to pin down. It's been a while in the making, as everyone says at the beginning of podcasts, so I shouldn't say that's very boring. Yeah. But obviously, no, right. From your curriculum vitae or your resume, depending which side of the pond you're on, you have an incredibly strong background. So we're not going to say any more about that because I think it speaks for itself. But we are going to plunge into our first episode of 2 episodes where we're going to talk about strategy, because I believe that is one of the focuses that we want to focus on here, because the tactical side is getting more and more commoditized. Obviously, You've got to get good at execution, but execution plus great strategy is obviously going to beat just great execution. So tell me a little bit about your approach to strategy, and how does the word strategy, what does that even mean, without getting too broad, but within relevance to e-commerce sellers?
Yeah. So strategy to me means planning for the future. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the future. People talk about strategy, they throw the word out all the time, and it's really planning for what you don't know is going to happen. I mean, business is the art of dealing with the unknown, right? As you don't know what's going to happen, and you have to get as many odds in your favor as possible. Now, I actually often think about chess. I used to teach chess when I was back in college, and I used to think with chess you have to know like every single move that your opponent would make, right? It's like, oh, I got to know 5 moves ahead or 10 moves ahead, whatever. But then after teaching it, I actually realized that chess is more about setting your pieces up where you have the most options for attack or defense possible, and that's how you keep moving. So your strategy is all about creating the most opportunity for yourself or the most defensibility for yourself wherever you're going to be inside chess. And I think that's a great analogy with business in general. Is I may not know what's going to happen, but if I take this step, it's going to create probably 4 more opportunities for me in the future. Versus if I do this one, it's a single opportunity for me.
Unfortunately, you have the job of also writing the show notes for this, by the way. Folks, just go to 10K Collective, 10K Collective.com for notes here, because you're going to want to take notes from this man. Very thought-provoking. So we're already plunging deep into business strategy. I love this. I really, really like that you're differentiating, like a lot of the top strategy thinkers that I admire, people like Richard Koch, who have a nice knack of keeping it really simple, and he's also made himself a ton of money by applying his own strategies rather than writing books about it. He's written books after making a shed load of cash, like he's worth about $300 billion roughly at the time of recording, like serious money. So I don't know how many figures that is, like 13 or something. But what you're saying is you're not about planning and anticipating every single move, because that would drive you mad and the computational power required would be insane. But it's about keeping options open. So it's more like strategy on a chessboard. If you're visualizing it, in my mind, it's more like dominating the center, for example, is a classic strategy, isn't it, in a simplistic sense? Getting your queen out not too early, because it's a very valuable piece that could be attacked, but getting it out at the right point where when the board is freer, it can move around more, that sort of stuff, right? I guess I'm a pretty poor chess player, but I love the game.
Yeah.
So in other words, I guess positioning is a word that comes together with the word strategy, isn't it? It's being in a position from which you can make tactical plays easily, right? Is that a fair summary?
I think that is. I think it's a really good comparison there.
Yeah, I really like chess comparison. So obviously, like all metaphors, it's going to work great for the people who know chess, and the people who don't, it's going to be bad. So we ought to think of it. So how does
If you
this?
don't know chess, I mean, it's the game's
Yeah,
so old. You better go learn chess.
yeah, go learn chess, folks. Yeah. Um, okay, so in practical terms, then, how does that translate? I mean, this is like a 50,000 foot view question, but I'm
Yeah.
okay with that because we can plunge into detail later. But how does that translate? Let's say you're working with, I know
So
you work with some very serious sellers, like people doing over $100 million a year or whatever. How does that translate for, say, this 7 or 8 figure seller?
yeah, for sure. So, and let me preface all of it that we use numbers and metrics to back up everything we're doing, and that's how I did it at Amazon. Right? Is I was what was unique about kind of the role that I got into at Amazon was I was in the world of creating businesses for Amazon. I mean, I wasn't running these businesses. Well, I ran them after, but I wasn't just an operator. I wasn't, just helping other people sell and all sorts of things. And there's different values that people gained from those opportunities. But from my perspective, I was in the world of creating new businesses for Amazon. How do you create a business? What are the things that you look at, and how do you structure from a metrics and technical perspective of, is this a healthy business? Is it going to be $1 million? Is it going to be $1 billion? It's going to be $100 million. And what are the metrics that you care about? And so I got a lot of hands-on, no training, but a lot of hands-on action and working inside of Amazon about creating these large businesses and the metrics and the systems around running a business and making it very healthy. Um, and so we use metrics in kind of all the things we do. And to more directly answer your question, it's when for a 7 8 figure seller, when we're talking about strategy, you don't just look at your product and say, hey, all right, my sales this week were 30,000. What's this tactic I'm going to do to get to 35,000? And what's this tactic I'm going to do in 2 weeks to get to 40,000? It's you roll all of that back and you say, okay, this year or last year I did $4 million, or I did whatever the number is, $4 million. Next year I want to grow to $8 million. Now, okay, if I want to go to $8 million, let's actually back into that with all the metrics. Well, if I take my existing listing, do I think I can grow it? What's a realistic growth rate of my existing listings? Is it a pretty competitive category, so I'm probably going to stay where I am, or do I need to grow it? Or maybe I can grow it by 20%. Okay, great. There's 20%. How am I going to get that extra 80%? Well, maybe I have to develop new products and put more products in my catalog. But you got to plan that long before then you're actually doing it, because as everyone knows, it takes a while to get a new product. And then you got to look at the failure rate of your potential products. And so you may actually create a full plan, a 12-year plan that says, okay, I'm at 4 million. I want to get to 8 million. That means I need to launch another 30 products. I'm planning on 50% of those failing, 50% or 20% doing okay, and 30% doing really well. And if those ones do really well, if I launch them within 6 months, that's going to mean an extra 80, $4 million that I'm going to hit by the following year. So it's a lot of the strategy is looking at what you want to be doing, and then you back into the plan to create that. Some of the more technical kind of strategic side of things that come along is when you start looking at different markets and different opportunities of those markets and saying, well, here's this market. It's not, here's all these competitors. A lot of them are cheap competitors, or a lot of them are high price competitors. Is there room for a middle price competitor in this market? And if I came in, what are the unique features I would need to put into my product to do that? That's a lot of the, when you're actually diving into the product selection component itself. And there's some really interesting strategies that you can do there when you're looking at the market itself. But hopefully, at least I've spurred some thoughts and ideas about how you would go about strategy, because it is different for every business. Every business has their own strengths. Amazon's a platform, a lot of different tactics on Amazon, but really the high level strategy should be the same regardless of what platform you're selling on. If it's e-commerce, you just got to know the strengths of e-commerce in your business inside of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so let's try and dig a little bit more into the sorts of detail because I've been reading a great book by Nicholas Nassim Taleb, if I've got his name right, who wrote famously Black Swan. I say famous amongst very, very nerdy people like myself. Apparently, Jeff Bezos made it a obligatory reading for his senior management team. I don't know if you were forced to
Interesting.
read it,
No,
but
I
uh,
wasn't.
but it's really it's high level stuff. I mean, it deals with I'm going to get the word wrong now. Ontology, I think. No, it's not even that. It's a specialist area of philosophy which deals with how do we know what we know and that stuff. Which sounds like a
Hmm.
ridiculous thing that should belong in university, and maybe it should. But again, he's one of those people that made himself rich. You know, he got FU money, as he puts it, by being an options trader, which is a very metrical driven and statistics driven thing, right? Even more than Amazon selling, if it's possible.
Yeah.
And then retired and wrote a load of books about it, which I respect more than somebody who just writes books about business theory. But one of the things he deals with is dealing with uncertainty, but also he talks about the fact that mistakes are actually, not doing the wrong thing are more important and more solid ground than aiming to do the right thing, which is an interesting kind of counterintuitive approach. So let's start with
Hmm.
mistakes. What mistakes do you see your clients making? And I guess if we have failed to make these mistakes, stay away from these. We're more likely to succeed. What are the classic errors in the sort of strategy level in e-commerce and specifically the Amazon space?
Um, a lot of things that I've seen is people relying on one method that they've learned. There's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of people who've had success with one method, and then they say and they swear on that method and say, "Hey, you have to do this. It's the only way to win on Amazon." And then people put their whole business on that one method, and then it doesn't work. I mean, we've what I learned early days, probably when I was still at Amazon, is someone would try the exact same method on two different products and it didn't work, right? It worked on one and didn't work on the other. And so many times people they jump to conclusions and trying to simplify this very complicated system by saying this is all you got to do. All you need are reviews. Reviews are the only thing you should care about, and that's all that matters. Now we actually have a formula where we break down the whole Amazon selling business the way we broke down businesses, the way I would break down a new business inside of Amazon. And we look at conversion rate and we look at traffic. I mean, those are two: conversion rate times traffic equals unit sales, right? So under conversion rate, we consider there's four different areas that matter as you start looking at it, and reviews is one of those four, right? Reviews matter for your conversion rate. That's all really they matter for, and your price point also impacts your conversion rate, and so do your images, and so do your text, right? Um, and so on the reviews piece, now I don't want to diminish the importance of reviews. I'm just trying to make a point. Reviews are extremely important, and there's actually some strategy with having really good, strong reviews with the business that you can do. But a lot of people just obsess on just reviews when we've gotten a business to $1 million run rate within 6 weeks with zero reviews. It had zero reviews at the time, right? It's like, oh, well, that's counterintuitive to everything that everyone's ever told me about Amazon. um, and it's because people are looking at these one little tactics or looking at things kind of in a vacuum in their world, and they work, and it's great, and they work for some people, and that's awesome. And what we're trying to do is look at it from a larger perspective, because we need a framework and structure to handle 100 different businesses or more that we're running. And that's it could be in 100 different categories, or whatever different niche and genre. I mean, people ask us, do we specialize in one thing or another? No, because we've actually set a really good framework that works no matter what category we're in. um,
That's
and so
pretty
that's our
amazing.
perspective.
That's a pretty extraordinary achievement, by the way. And we're talking businesses, some of them doing over $100 million a year. So I mean, that's an amazing thing. So I'll just point out and jump in there and say, if you want to get this framework, folks, or a version of it, you can get a free PDF at amazingfba.com/framework. Sounds like a bit of a silly thing to call it just framework. I mean, but
Yeah.
it's hopefully memorable enough for you to go grab it. And look, if you've just heard what the man said and you know Brad's background and you're in any way serious about Amazon, you're already clicking on that link if I were you. I'm just saying, because anything that can achieve that is extraordinary. So, backing up then, trying to get some solid ground amongst all the metrics and favorite obsessions, as you say, reviews, ranking and reviews are the favorite obsessions and mastermind
Hmm.
groups that I've sat in. And, whether it's
Hmm.
fortunately not the 10K collective that I run, and we were broader with that, but in a lot of the time it gets down to that discussion. So for you, conversion rate and traffic are the pillars kind of metrics. Is that right, or is that just
Yep.
too simplistic?
No, it's that's
Okay.
it. So we have an
Great.
equation. It's on the revenue side, those are the two that matter.
Great.
There's actually another side called cost, and that's if you're
Okay.
making money or not. And
Yeah.
there's other components on that side. But on the revenue side, which everyone loves to talk about and
Yeah.
focus on, which is it's kind of the sexy side of things, right?
Yeah.
Those are the two that we care about.
So I know that you mentioned to me when we chatted before we came to the show that a classic error is failure to plan, and they say, okay, failure to plan is fail. There's a cliche. Is that true? How does it manifest itself, if so?
So in the early days of Amazon, you didn't need a plan at all. I mean, you
Okay.
could. My very first product inside of Amazon, they actually said we could. They suggested, hey, go sell stuff, and it helped me with my job. And my wife was looking around some stuff to sell, and she found something on Etsy that she liked, and she was going to manufacture it. So we just bought it, and then we resold it on Amazon, and it sold within like 2 or 3 days. And there was no advertising, there was nothing. And it was like, wow, this platform's powerful, right? Like, who are we, and why would someone buy this product? I took a picture with my cell phone. Now that everyone's done that, right, and the kind of land grab um, has happened inside of Amazon. So now it's more about real estate development, right? So it's, the land grabs happen, and now you need to, so you can't just do the rushing and not planning anymore. You need to start planning about what you're doing, start thinking longer term, and thinking, okay, if this happens, if this doesn't happen, what's my backup plan? How can I pivot these different products if I need to, or what's my product group makeup going to be? I can't just sell one product. I'm not just going to be selling, um, you know, uh, I don't know, whatever the top products are. My banana slicer, right? I can't just sell my banana slicer and make $1 million on that anymore. Maybe I got to think about 2 or 3 different areas that I want to flesh out of my brand, and how do I boost my brand with the selling of these other products, and create a larger strategy around that.
Okay. So what I'm getting is thinking longer term, having backup plans, and being able to pivot. So obviously, that having a set of products that has something to do with each other makes you a more sellable brand, obviously, and has some kind of coherence in the storefront and all the rest. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
a bit more about this pivot idea, because that's less commonly talked about. I mean, I think one of the reasons entrepreneurs, and that includes me. I mean, I'm nothing like as successful as I'm fortunate to work with a lot of clients who are killing it and doubling revenue every year from a standing start or from good numbers already. Um, they're they've got a healthy, I would say, healthy skepticism of planning and theory, because
Mm-hmm.
often the plan and the reality don't coincide very well. So how do we bridge that gap? Because uh, let's talk about the pivot thing, because I think that's really critical.
Yeah.
It comes back to the thing you said right at the top of the show, which is, it's like chess is not about seeing forward 10 moves, like planning to the nth degree, like a computer would.
Yeah.
But it's using your human intuition and experience to go, I need to leave my options open. And generally, this kind of strategy leaves more options open. So, how does that interact with a plan? Because obviously, a plan
Mm-hmm.
in theory is rigid, and an improvisation based on options is
Yeah.
not. So, how's the
Yeah.
interaction between those two? That's a hell of a
So
question, I realize,
no, it is, because it's actually a really really complicated component here. Not necessarily complicated, it just takes a lot of thought, and so I'll do my best to kind of answer. But I think there's some additional thoughts here that even I'm not that I'm not considering. But when you're talking about pivoting, so the first thing that comes to mind for me that I've seen is um, you get into a category, you're trying to sell, you're getting a little bit of traction, but maybe your conversion rate is really low. Um, and which means, and then people instantly jump to, well, it's because my reviews are bad, or I don't have enough reviews, which is true. That's one of the inputs, right? But there could be some other components about your product that are driving your conversion rate down. You might start looking at your images that you've chosen to show and support your product. You might need to take a different angle, understanding who that customer is that's coming to your product. Is this, there's all sorts of segmentations and groups of who your customers are. That's actually another side of our business that we help companies understand is who their customer is on Amazon. Um, but even without any of the data behind it, trying to get some information about who are these people buying my product, and how can I market it or show these images that might change their perspective on it, right? I don't know if you've ever heard of the squatty potty. right? That's
I
it.
haven't. I haven't had the pleasure. I have now. I feel
Look
slightly
up the
soiled,
Google
but yeah, we'll
video.
we'll deal with it.
That was an amazing Google video. But like their marketing approach is genius in just making it about a silly, with a silly unicorn, in the video, and it's pretty funny. But it's genius in how they just changed the dynamic of how they're marketing their product. So that might be one thing, right? Is looking about, and Amazon really your source. They have infinite store shelf space. So it's all about your images of how you're showing your product. And maybe you got to show it a different way, different lifestyle images. Hey, are people, am I going to show the same like happy couple on the beach walking for my lifestyle image? Or maybe my lifestyle image should be something more integrated into someone's life, right? Like maybe like a dad helping his son, because he got hurt. I don't know. I mean, I'm just throwing random ideas. Um, that's where the creative side comes from to maybe pivot how you're presenting that product. Another interesting thing, and that we've seen with the market on Amazon, is it used to be everyone, in terms of pricing, everyone used to rush to the bottom. And Amazon's all about trying to push price down because customers want cheaper things, right? Now, that's filling up, and as the whole marketplace is filling up, there's actually opportunity for price at the top of the market also, and not just the bottom. If you look at Apple products, those things are made really cheaply. Well, not cheaply. They're made for a cost-effective um, price, and their multiples are crazy high. But people are spending a lot of money on these little things because the brand is so strong. And so there is this idea of, hey, I want to be the premium brand in this space, and there might be room for a premium brand in your space. When you've come in low, or typically what really happens is someone comes in high and they say, hey, we want to be premium, and maybe they can't be premium, or their images aren't displaying that as premium well enough, or the product itself is just not good enough. So what's your backup? What's your pivot of, well, maybe we should do another version of this product where we can make it slightly cheaper, and come into the middle of the market, or have a low cost version of this that could then lead people to the high cost version of what it is.
Really glad you said that because I had to sort of bite my tongue when you said the premium positioning as the aim because wow, the number of people, I mean, it's mostly people who are starting out from raw, but it's not always. It's like the number of people that aim for premium positioning and fall flat on their faces has just been frightening to me because Amazon, I mean, Jeff Bezos says, I'm preaching to converted to with you, but just to remind people what the man says. Okay, for years, he's very consistent about this. I'm sure you got this drummed into you at Amazon. Customers want three things: lower prices, greater selection, quicker delivery. Amazon takes care of the delivery. Unfortunately, greater selection is terrible for us as sellers, and lower prices is terrible as well. But there is a downwards price on Amazon. Now, of course, there's a whopping range of price points, which includes premium. But my experience is that you have to have really strong brand recognition to get premium prices, which is not a surprise, right? But how have you found that with the more serious brands? Because I've seen that a lot with newbies, less so with more established brands. But how does that aiming for
So
premium but pivoting game look with the say
yeah,
$100 million sellers or even the 10 million, 20 million, 30 million
yeah.
level?
So what's really hard is that you need to, for the premium branding and premium pricing, you actually have to be really good at branding the products. And I mean, getting agencies and photos and things that are done extremely well, because you can tell. I mean, there's usually like that 20 to 10% difference between someone who's good and someone who's really good at that branding. And we found when someone can come in with something really good, then that helps. That definitely helps with the premium. Getting reviews around your product help the premium price point. And and then good copy on your page and good EBC, that also helps. I mean, that's the presentation to the consumer. At some point, the reviews totally matter. Of, hey, this might be 2 times expensive as everyone else, but it only has 3 stars, so everyone's so then the social reassurance is super low
So have
in
you
that
actually though
scenario.
seen people, this is the bit that I find doesn't I haven't seen it happening that much, although occasionally that people want to create a premium brand purely via Amazon. But my experience is that the brands that you actually, when you buy on Amazon, if as a consumer, or if you look at behavior of your research in the markets, the brands that actually command a serious brand premium have earned it because they spent a lot of money or a lot of effort off Amazon, maybe on Instagram these days if they're really, really niched in and it's the right demographic. So it tends to be younger, fashion, very obviously famous for that,
Hmm.
more female demographic traditionally, etc. That's mutating fast. TV ads, even in some cases, obviously there are some brands that have an awful Amazon listing where they sell at a great, probably convert well. We don't get that data, and certainly the price point's high because they've got the off Amazon brand. So how
Hmm.
realistic is it to just build a brand purely within the Amazon platform and get solid pricing, in your opinion?
So we've done it. We've done it multiple times, but I would say it's for the mass businesses out there, it's probably the exception and not the norm, from what I've seen. Um, and and we've tried to help identify, what are the great things, what are the things that we've done that's really helped establish that. And a lot of it does come down to the category and then the detail page and how well we established that and how good we made it look, for those clients. But yeah, it typically is the opposite way. Now, here's an interesting point. Now, I don't know if this would necessarily be the audience listening to the podcast, but if you have a brand that's not on Amazon and you've been doing marketing for years, and whether you're a big company, $100 million company or more, or you're a small company, and you're or a medium-sized company, and you're thinking about coming on Amazon, that's actually a strategic advantage that you have. All the marketing you've been doing off of Amazon and the years of history, that's still gonna help you on Amazon. What's been happening to those companies? They've got their lunch um, handed to them, lunch eaten by these smaller sellers who've come on and built their own brands and established some really good products and really good brands on Amazon because there was a void in the market. Now, these bigger guys, actually, there's still opportunity for sure for them to come in Amazon and do a really good job and get a lot of sales on Amazon. I mean, the entire marketplace is growing, right? So it's more pie for everyone to share. And not being on Amazon means you lose out on roughly 50% of your sales, right? Or your
So,
e-commerce sales.
so I guess what you're saying is that the exception to the norm, being able to build it on Amazon only. And thank you for being honest about that. I'm sure, like, some with your abilities and your team behind, the quality of people you've got access to, photographers, image marketing, statistics you can draw on, it makes sense that if anyone's going to be able to do it, it's you. But it is hard. And thank you for being honest about that. And as you say, yeah, I think. Um, there's a huge opportunity for people who've got an existing brand. I know a couple of the businesses that I've got in a mastermind, one of which is killing it on Amazon, and they've got a very, very established off Amazon brand. I mean, it was even offline years ago. And there's another one which has got a very strong history. And I remember speaking to the guy who owns the company, very, very long history, like 100 years. And he said, oh, we might be getting out of XYZ category, and XYZ, I should say. And I said, please don't, because you've got an incredible brand and you have incredible supply chain depth, knowledge, and quality and all the rest. So he's an interesting person who's trying to transition into the Amazon world,
Hmm.
um, and I think can afford to leverage that existing brand hugely more. And
Yeah.
that's always interesting to me. I guess you must see that a lot with your agency,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. And we see a lot of companies, big brands, even offshoots of big companies. They're like, hey, let's launch this new or this product on inside of Amazon. Um, that's been doing well other places, and we just want to get it into Amazon, and it will do well inside of Amazon when they do, if they do it right.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay, so let's come back down to sort of some more. I guess not exactly concrete because it's strategic stuff. I mean, one of the problems with strategy is like as entrepreneurs, we want to see numbers coming out of it. We want to take an action and see a result. And of course, there's a
Hmm.
bit of a gap right between those two sometimes. So um, I'll come to that in a second, actually, because there's a sort of mental problem there. Sounds a bit wrong. You know what I mean? So you were saying what really matters on the revenue side, conversion rate and traffic. What are the other metrics that you think really matters that we can afford to get obsessed with rather than micro managing, say, only reviews and ignoring the fact that your images suck and that your text is bad?
Yeah.
What are
Yeah.
the,
So
the, the pillar metrics, if you like?
for us, so conversion rate and traffic are the two big metrics. Underneath conversion rate are those four things that I mentioned: your price, your reviews, the images you have, and then the text and how you're explaining your product. Those are the four things that really matter for conversion rate from what we found. Um, on the traffic side, there's two big funnels to traffic that we consider. One is organic traffic, so natural traffic that comes to your product, and the other is paid traffic that goes to your product. So the paid traffic, and then we actually have about 4 different things that break down each one of those. It's on the model, actually, the framework. Um, the organic is all about how you set up your product in the back end. A lot of people don't do a lot of research into how they should be set up in the back end. I guess there's some, I mean, you see hackers coming in and like moving their product category just to get certain badges, which is, those are bad actors. Don't do that. But again, that's a very short-term tactic, right? It's like a tactic. Hey, this has worked. You do it, it works. Amazon restricts you, and then you got issues, right? But the back end, how you set up your product in the right category, and then all the keywords, doing all the keyword research of what are the best keywords for this product, and how do I want that all displayed. That all contributes to what we call your SEO, your Amazon optimization, right? And that's all organic traffic. And essentially the way the algorithm works, let's just talk from a high level. It basically works on sales. If I'm selling socks and I look up socks, the number one seller on socks is the one who has the most sales right now on socks. That's really generally how it works. There's tons of speculation about all sorts of things, and I think there's some interesting things Amazon's doing to potentially adjust that based on region and even ship speed, but that's all kind of speculation right now. In general, you want the most sales possible, right? And that's going to optimize your organic results. And on the paid traffic, so an organic is going to, that's the number of page views you're getting. Where your page views is a combination of both that and then your paid, or all the page views you're getting from advertising. So then on the ad side, you have the headline ads, your PPC, the sponsored product ads, the display page ads, and then those are on Amazon. Then you also have Amazon DSP, which we may talk about at a different time. But all that paid advertising, and we actually even loop in stuff you're doing that's dumping traffic in from off of Amazon, because you're going to be paying for it. But you consider, what are all the paid? How much is it? I mean, am I using? How much is it costing me to dump all this traffic into Amazon on my detail page? And that's going to be more traffic too. So your traffic is a combination between the organic and the paid, and then that equals your total traffic number. And really, some of the art that we do a lot is balancing what your organic and your paid traffic is, and are we dumping in too much paid, or are we spending too much to dump in the paid? And hey, maybe our organic traffic's suffering a lot. Maybe we're doing way too much paid, and that means something's broken on our keywords or our backend or where we're positioned on that. In general, we see between 60 to 80% of traffic should be coming from organic. When across all the products, tens of thousands of products that we've looked at, or hundreds of thousands of products. So those are some more nitty gritty details inside of these two, but I consider it as a structure, a hierarchy structure of conversion rate and traffic, and then underneath that, what's next that you pay attention to.
Yeah, it's interesting how talking to people who are very, very expert at this stuff. I spoke to Tommy Griffith, who used to do SEO. I'm interviewed him for the podcast, so you can listen to it, folks, if you want a very, very good interview to listen to, because he's got an SEO mindset. So it's not just Google, although that is his specialism. He worked for Airbnb and PayPal as their SEO head of SEO, so seriously qualified. And he said, look, in a way, it's quite simple. And what you're saying is it also makes it sound simple. And just because everything that feeds those things may be very complex, that we shouldn't be losing track of the big picture stuff. And I guess this comes back to the question that I was playing out with earlier, which is, what the hell is strategy? I suppose, in a sense, strategy can sound like the sort of thing that somebody who's read a business book once just pops up on LinkedIn. I've been overdosing LinkedIn recently, and it can be full of you get pretty bored of people saying very generalized stuff about business, like, yeah, okay, great, but where's the nitty gritty here? Where's the texture? Where's the hands-on experience? Again, talking about Nassim Nicholas Taleb and hands-on. Sorry, talking about hands-on. I'm just throwing my glass around here. If you're hearing interesting background. Yeah. So in other words, how do we avoid the danger of strategy being so general that it's of no use to anyone because it could apply to any business ever? And also, how do we get that? How do we connect those bigger picture things and planning with the day-to-day execution side?
Yeah, I think it's interesting how you're pointing it out. Strategy should not be so high level it can't be executed and tactical. What was interesting with our role at Amazon is we came in and we had to apply strategy and tactics to everything we were doing. So I would come in and create the strategy and then go through and build the metrics around it and actually tactically create what we were creating. So, for example, the seller app, and maybe this will help answer some of your question. For the seller app, we looked at the strategy was we think there, or I had to make a business case. Look, we can make X amount of more dollars by creating an app for businesses to use to run their business on Amazon. And the strategy in how we're going to create this app is we're going to create three essential functions that, so I did all my research and analysis. People use mobile for three different things. They use it for location agnostic events. So something that's happened and I need to understand my location, right? They use it for um, an emergency or quickly notifications, essentially as a phone or a text device, and then they use it when they're bored, right? They're when they're bored on the train or whatever. So of the things we created um, a a scanning app on the mobile where you can go and scan a product, scan its UPC, it looks it up on Amazon, and it shows you what the price is on Amazon, and then if you sold it on Amazon, what you would make on that product. So people can go down and use it as an arbitrage tool, go to Costco, scan a bunch of stuff, be like, well, if I sell it on Amazon, I'll make $5 on this. So there's that one, and that's the location agnostic piece. There's the other one is urgent notifications or communication, and that's the buyer seller messaging. And we created a whole portal to create buyer seller messaging on the mobile app, which is not exposed into MWS APIs, and you can't get that anywhere else besides the mobile app. But the point there was we were trying to drive down the metric of buyer seller message response time, because that's a big deal for Amazon, and all the reports are there, right? And you want it less than 24 hours. And we actually found that people who are using the app, their average buyer seller message response time went from like 7 or 8 hours down to like 3. And so that was big success. And then the last one was when you're bored, um, why are you going to use this app? Well, we're going to show you your sales, because everyone's going to be obsessed with their sales and they're going to keep swiping and finding their sales. That's why that dashboard, that homepage dashboard is there, because people on their phone are going to be bored. They're going to pull it out. They're like, oh, what are my sales right now? What are my sales right now? And many people told me they kind of got addicted to that part.
I was
But
just about to say I blame you for my addiction on that. I remember,
yeah,
especially when I first launched. My God, like everyone does it. They sit there, swipe, swipe, swipe. Just looking,
yeah.
looking at see if anyone bought anything.
I,
And my God,
I've done the same thing. I mean,
yeah.
but the strategy was, hey, we're going to make a bunch of money by putting in these three different features, because these three different features are what people use a cell phone device for. And technically, that's in negotiating around and whatever with the company. Those are the key features I could get into the app, with the teams that were available and all that kind of stuff. But those are actually the three biggest that we called out based on the strategy. So strategy is a wrap up of, hey, what's my opportunity on the market, and then what's my differentiator with my products or whatever I'm giving to a consumer, and then going out and then technically making it happen. Then aside from my business case that I made, I then, once we made it, then we went into, okay, we're going to do all the designs of what the app should look like. We got to build the systems to generate all this stuff. That's all kind of the tactics into making the stuff happen. But the high level strategy was planned, it was set, and we went after it. And we went, and it was more than a nine figure business within the first year of launch,
So that's what, like over
for
$100 million.
Amazon.
Yeah, amazing. So I guess there's another question that comes up, which I think you just put out the differentiation piece that Vern Harnish in his amazing book Scaling Up, which is another book I really, really, really like a lot, and it's been recommended to me by a couple of guys who are scaling up Amazon service-based businesses. One is Ash Monger, who has been on the show as well. Get great guests on the show. Um,
Yeah.
Very privileged to talk to them, and he's scaling up a business from nothing and in sourcing, and he's been talking about that. And what Vern Harnish says is that a lack of profits often is a sign of a poor strategy. And for him, he says marketing strategy equals strategy as far as I'm concerned, which is quite the statement. I mean, not everyone's going to agree with that, but it's quite interesting. And differentiation is at the core of that. So in other words, if you're not profitable, the temptation is to go back to your suppliers and beat them up on price, or go and make your listing look prettier. And of course, that's important, but prettier for whom and in what way, right? So I guess that comes down to differentiation. Like, what are your thoughts to that?
So that's interesting. I would probably say in a growth scenario, in a strictly a growth scenario, marketing, your marketing strategy might mean strategy. Then again, just to push back on that idea, Amazon was built with almost no marketing. Bezos built the company based on a good business and a good model, and they did almost no marketing. There was like, you should see, his opinion of marketing was that it was silly and that they shouldn't even do it, for years. And he kept, people had to keep convincing him and pushing more and more to actually do commercials. I mean, those have only come out in the last several years. Like for like 15 years of Amazon, they didn't do any of that stuff, and they grew to a monster giant without any marketing. It's because they built a service based on the needs of consumers, right? People need those three things. They wanted things faster, cheaper, and more of them, and they provided them there. And he started with books because no one could go to a bookstore and get a selection of 100,000 books. They would only have 10,000 books as a selection in the store. So he created Amazon, because it had all 100,000 and then a million and more, right? Is a selection idea. So it's perhaps in his world, for sure, of trying to consider that strategy is only the marketing strategy, and maybe this is not a fair debate because it's only one-sided right now. He's not here to defend.
He
But
is
the
somebody
idea
that
of,
I'm going to reach out to be fair. But you make a
yeah,
valid point there. I mean, Amazon itself, which is weirdly enough for all of us a marketing machine, was built without much marketing
yeah,
spend.
and
Or yeah, it's crazy, right? And but I suppose that the common ground with that, I often find if there are two superficially opposing views, and there may
yeah,
be, and there's a good debate to be had. I like this; it's a great debate to have with your team and your senior team. But I think if you go to an even higher level, like, okay, understanding the consumer needs and having those as strategic drivers that go through everything, like Brighton Rock, which is what we call in the UK, like the sticks of candy, I guess you call it. If you break it and it says Brighton Rock all the way through, so it goes
okay.
through everything. I don't know if it's the thing for Americans, but it's in other words. I guess that is maybe marketing is not the right word if you think that means advertising and adverts and whatever,
Well,
but maybe
marketing is
market
bigger than
understanding. Yeah,
advertising
I
for
was going to
sure.
say maybe it means maybe you could say that. Look at me defending Vern Harnish. I should get him on the show, but
Yeah. I could
I
see from
guess
that perspective, marketing is it's market positioning and how you're
market positioning, yeah,
differentiated,
maybe
right?
that's the maybe different. Yeah, right. Okay, let's disagree on the word differentiation and positioning, which is always an interesting
Hmm.
question. And I guess positioning is a metaphor from the world of physical, armies moving around. And again, that strategy, in other words, strategic positioning is a big picture kind of thing from which you can be very flexible. But I guess it would help to have a concrete example. And I guess I suppose if um, Nike is positioned as the sort of everyman go-to, moderately overpriced trainers, but they're not like really high end. Whereas Jimmy Choo is like seriously expensive shoes, and they're not mass market. They're not aiming to be. I guess they're positioning themselves by that simple device of are we going for
And
brand premium products, premium pricing,
and
that
if
stuff.
if you really get into like if you get like super hardcore into the strategy, you actually look at the market, the full market, and see where the gaps are in the market with your
Mm,
product,
yeah.
right? And you say, hey, is anyone selling rocks on Amazon? Right. First of all, is there a market for rocks? And if there is anyone even doing it? I mean, you might think, hey, let's. And if someone is selling rocks, are they selling premium rocks or are they selling cheap rocks? Right. When you think about products and consumer goods, and you're thinking about this, you kind of look at, hey, are people getting what they need to get? I mean, the idea of mattresses and Purple Mattress and all the other mattresses that have exploded online. The idea was a mattress is huge. I have to go to a store, put it on my truck to get it in my home. All of a sudden, Purple comes in, boom, you can buy this online. It will show up in your door in 3 days or 2 days or whatever it is. All of a sudden, it's mattresses for the e-commerce world of the ease of e-commerce, which means people don't have to get all the goods from a physical store, and that exploded, right? That really blew up. Um, particularly that with their advertising that they did. But that's one example of a market that no one was going after, and it was a huge market. So the strategy is, if you're getting really hardcore in the strategy, it's looking at a high level, what are these markets out there and what hasn't been penetrated. And if you're going to use Amazon as a channel or e-commerce as a channel, then you have to look at the benefits of e-commerce for the consumer and say, well, are there any products or services that are filling those niches and those needs for me? And if there aren't, and you found one, or you found one you can kind of convert into that market, then it might be a great thing for you, right?
Great.
Think of
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff like cars. I mean, eBay's killed it with cars. You can buy a car online, right? Like that was a big deal when it first came out. Because it's awesome. It's a new thing, and there's a market for it. So when you think about your product, you might say, hey, is anyone selling flagpoles on Amazon? No. Why? Like, that's it, because the shipping is so hard. But maybe you could solve that, right? I don't know.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I guess if people could solve the shipping of mattresses and make the economics of that work, that they're bulky as hell. I mean, they're really heavy. They're really awkward
yeah,
shape. They don't fit through doorways very quickly and easily. And yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that, I'm sure you're right. It comes down to, if you're going to solve a big problem for somebody, you've got to be willing to go and sweat over the details of it, because it will, that be excellence in execution, I guess, right? But at least the
Hmm.
strategic positioning
From the
theory would be
strategic,
at
it's
least, yeah, at
yeah,
least
find
we
the hole in
should,
the market,
yeah,
understand the market, find the holes in the
yeah.
gaps, find something to fill it, and then go
Yeah.
after it. That's your
And then
strategy.
it becomes an execution problem, and you can go to
Yeah.
your chief operating officer, just have a small heart attack, and they go, "Oh my God, Mike, mattresses? Are you serious?" And then they go away and sweat over it. I guess I'm sure that's how
And
it
they
works
go
in
and
a
they
lot.
say, wait, what if we roll them up really tight and we only
Yeah,
use
that
foam
was that
mattresses
was
and
occurring
whatever?
to
It's
me
like, okay,
immediately. There you
okay.
go. I was ahead of you. Yeah. So exactly. But that, I mean, I think that's a great place to wrap this episode up, which is coming back to this chess metaphor that you use, which I really like. I guess because I like chess. So forgive me if you're listening and you don't. But I think that idea that instead of trying to see 10 moves ahead like a computer does, and that's how computers play, right? And it's pure computational power. We acknowledge we're human and don't foresee the future, so we are going to position ourselves such that we see a gap and try and fill it, like dominate the center of the board, to use the analogy of chess, and then leave ourselves plenty of options for tactical little 2 and 3 move sort of combinations to take out the enemy. And I think that's interesting that in the end we seem to come back round to some kind of consensus around the idea of positioning as driving strategy. So very interesting. And again, the word gaps in the market, a lot of the time I speak to again experts that they're really good at an area, the strategy is kind of simple. And I think the art is probably keeping it simple when you're buried in data, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's what
I
Jeff
mean,
Bezos has done an amazing job of.
let me just end with one last point. We used to
Please.
write lots of business papers inside of Amazon,
Mm.
and the number one rule was you have to make this simple. It has to be written so like a fourth or fifth grader could understand this. And when you think about it, these are people trying to solve the most complicated issues. But if you really get a concept or if you really understand what you're doing, you can distill it to something simple. And that's why Bezos has those three things. It's really simple to grasp and understand and actually go after. And some of the best business papers I've ever seen are like super simple. And you're like, wow, this guy's getting paid $1 million a year and he's writing something this simple. But it's because he's that good that he can write it that simple. And I realize a lot of my college professors are full of BS because they couldn't write anything simple.
Yeah,
but uh, but
yeah,
that was, at least at Amazon, that was, I think I love that principle, is that if it's really good and you're really good at what you're doing, you can simplify it down, and you can distill it down um,
absolutely. And I
the
guess
whole way.
that's the thing, isn't it? If it's not simple, it's not probably a strategic objective. It's something different. Maybe it belongs in the execution inbox, like the chief operating officer sweating over, or logistics person. But yeah, I like that a lot. And again, let's look at what actually works for the really super successful businesses. Amazon is crazy successful, has been consistently for a long time, and
Mhm.
they have that rule. They have that culture. So let's just roll with it. So Brad, thank you so much for revealing not only your approaches to strategy, but some great learnings from within the Amazon ecosystem when you're working there as well.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.